Do you believe it's still possible for our brain to still grow and heal through neuroplasticity, even though the potency of even though the marijuana today is way more potent with THC than it used to be?
I absolutely believe it. I think when I started down a path in neuroscience, I didn't start studying addiction in the beginning, but as I started to look at the neurobiology of it, many people with substance use disorder, they say, and I hate this adage of once an addict, always an addict. And being a neuroscientist and studying the brain related to addiction, I know that's false. And the reason I say that is one of the things that our data and other people have also showed is that what's happening to the brain when you have a substance use disorder and then use high potency cannabis, we're changing these tags on our DNA called these epigenetic tags. So, epigenetics, and you asked the question earlier, Doug, about the environment. The environment can impact on, we inherit the DNA sequence from our parents, so genetics. And that determines how your cells communicate, obviously, how we look, and so on. The environment, and THC is one of them, and high dose THC can impact how the cells communicate, and they impact it by these epigenetic tags that are put on the brain so it remembers the high potency effect. And so when you use THC again later, even if you hadn't had it for a while, you're much more sensitive to, like I said before, the cognitive impairing effects, the anxiety effects. Epigenetic mechanisms are reversible. You can't reverse your genetics. You can reverse epigenetic modifications that are put on the tags in the cells. And so for me, I know it's reversible because of what neuroscience has taught me. However, in the cancer field, cancer is a disorder, I would say, of epigenetics gone awry, and there are a lot of medications developed to normalize cells that are no longer, that have gone rogue. We can do the same in neuroscience. We just haven't completely found ways to do it in a safe manner. But because what's THC is changing are these epigenetic tags, we can reverse them. And you can reverse them even with behavior. We know that. So environment can put tags on, but another environment can help to remove those detrimental tags. And so for me, it is reversible. And I do think that we will be able to find ways to help people, whether it's through behavior, whether it's through meditation, whether it is through, positive aspects in their life, whether it's through another medication, we will be able to reverse that.
I'd love to get into ways and behavior modifications that people can look into in order to reverse it. But before we do that, is your confidence in the brain's ability to reverse itself and heal as as high in the developing brain with kids? Because you mentioned the risk of kids who smoke it when their brain is developing. Are you as confident that people in that situation can reverse this as well? Are you as confident in people in that situation being able to reverse it as you are with, like, say, adults who start using later in life?
That's an important question. So we can reverse it in our animal models. So, for example, I also study prenatal effects of cannabis, and both in people and in our animal models. And we see similar things in their kids and their offspring. We can even, the data shows we can predict their kids' behavior based on the placental changes, you know, um, from in utero placenta to their behavior later. And in animals, we can change that epigenetic mark and change their behavior. We can't do that. I go into the brain and I do that with our animal models. I'm not going to do that with humans. So it may be possible. Definitely, you're right in that the later the exposure, the more that we can change those modifications. So there are two different things. I talked about, you could say, we can reverse. We may not need to reverse. We just may need to, again, homeostasis. You can say we reverse one thing, or you can bring up something else. So the question is how perhaps early developmental effects of THC, we may not be able to use the same mechanisms as we do, say, in adults, but we can then strengthen some other parts of the system. And that, I think, is equally a strategy that we need to explore more. But as I said, I do think that even though the developing brain obviously sets the trajectory long term, the neuroscientist in me, based on what I see, I do think that it lends itself still to be able to be modified. And so I'm optimistic in that manner, but it may be two different ways in which we go about. Um, it's it's the tree. A tree is born and it starts bending. Can you then put it back towards this? It's going to be a different thing that you need to do. And so I think that strategies that we use for kids will need to think about that probably differently than adults.
So I want to close the loop on the stuff with kids, and then I want to get into like the behavior modification and the systems that we can strengthen in order to help reverse and recover from an addiction to cannabis. So if parents are listening to this and they're like, well, what do I do? Like, I can try and talk to my kids. I can go to different websites for resources, but then they go to school and they're immersed with all this stuff. They're on social media. It's all over the place in front of them. Like, what do I do? Do you have any advice for a parent that might be listening to this to be able to navigate this in the best way possible?
It is very difficult, I think, to be a parent of teenagers or even younger. I mean, kids are starting younger and younger to, experiment with cannabis. And to me, the earlier you can start talking to your children openly about drugs, the better. And when I say that, it comes back to at the dining table or the every day, what are the things, how do you build a communication with your kids? So it's not a judgmental thing. It's just about knowledge. It's the same thing that you need to do for everything. But I think drugs are so critical today. And one thing I will emphasize, I didn't say earlier, what parents don't realize, unfortunately, even there are people putting fentanyl into cannabis today so that your children are much more at risk because how do you get the next generation addicted quicker? So it is important that the more kids are kind of trained to really be mindful and make their own decisions, whether it's about what color socks do I wear today, have them to empower. So the more that kids are empowered, the less they're vulnerable to other people, that they care about what other people think, even their friends. But to me, it is about communication. Obviously, not everyone can do that, but to me, it's also helping your kids change their environment. If your child has a particular interest in a sport, try to encourage that. If they love music in the context, try to encourage things that can help to move them away from just, either a particular group of friends that may be using a lot, giving them exposure to many different things in their lives, but having open conversations. But not gonna lie, it is difficult, and it's difficult because drugs are so abundant, and especially potent drugs are so abundant that can get your child addicted much quicker.
Do you think that part of the solution also has to be something within the schools where there needs to be some sort of constructive, productive class education on stuff like this? Because I know they tried it with like Dare, which
Yeah,
was failed, very, very badly, right? What are your thoughts on all that?
yeah, I absolutely do. But again, it comes back to let's empower the kids. We have a program here at Mount Sinai where Dr. Shilpa Taufik, we work in the community with two schools that the kids have had traumatic, let's just put it, lives. And we bring psychosocial um, therapy to these kids. People said, oh, the kids would never sign up. We're booked. It's about the Department of Education realizing that our community is very different today and that school provides an important environment for them to get the behavioral tools that they need to succeed. But like you said, even education, and the earlier to start education, but it's empowerment again. Have the kids do the experiments. Don't have people come in and scare them, say, "Oh, this is your brain is going to explode if you take this drug," and so on. Work with scientists like myself. We develop experiments, have the kids be part of that. so they can answer the questions themselves that they say, "Are you sure that this does this and this?" When we empower kids, they're amazing. So I really think that the Department of Education has a bigger role to play, and it's not because it's their fault. It's just that our society has changed, but we have not changed how we educate kids. And parents, I agree with you, cannot do it alone. It is a whole community effort. Also, community leaders can, again, going back after school programs in certain communities that don't have the money to, send their kids to this and that program. What do we build in the communities to have safe spaces for kids just to be kids, and educate them about drugs in a manner that's not talking down to them, but having them be part of the conversation. It's all about empowerment, and everybody along that path needs to be a part of it.
So when you talk about experiment, do you just mean like bringing these kids together collectively and meeting with somebody like you and having you talk with them, at the same level about cannabis and its effects and stuff? I mean, you're not right?
Well, it's not that they will come to our lab. We do have summer programs, and some kids do. We do accept kids to come in during the summer. Mount Sinai also have a program throughout the school year, and they actually come into the lab and do experiments. But we can do virtual experiments where they can, this is a research question that they would like, and they investigate virtually the answers to that. Again, it's not me coming just to talk to them, but it's how can we have them be part of the conversation and come up with their own answers. And that's what I think we're not doing enough, is realizing, especially teenagers, they're smart, but we haven't treated them in that way. They can be part of the conversation, but a lot of them are hurting. So make sure that in the school system, that we can't give it to the educators. They have enough to do. You need to bring in the therapists with this who have the psychosocial. We have psychologists, psychiatrists for those who meet a certain level, social workers in the program that we have developed. That it's a community effort. Teachers cannot be the social workers. They cannot be the psychologists, the psychiatrists, but you can make a team for the school that provides that. So kids are in a safe space where they need help for different things. Simple.
So getting back to some of the solutions for recovering from cannabis addiction, cannabis use disorder, what are some of the systems that you believe somebody should work on strengthening? If somebody, let's just say, is like day one in recovery and they're like, all right, I want to do everything I can to modify my behavior and change so that I'm not seeking out substances like cannabis to help me numb pain, manage stress. What kind of activities should they be focusing on and stuff like that?
You know, that's a challenging thing because everyone is so different, and I think you have to go with what are the things that bring you joy. For some people, it is about, I do think I'm also this, in addition to meditation is bad, I'm bad with, I'm not going to say go run. I'm horrible at running, but for some people, they actually love running. And our natural endorphin system is an important part as well. How do we, if you've depleted something, how do you fill it back? And so to me, it is knowing that it is one day at a time, but positive things that come into your life? How do you try to bring back natural joy? How do you try to bring back things that alleviate the anxiety? Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important that people understand that they're not alone. And it is to find whether it is a group therapy or groups may have common interests or individual therapy in order to help them. I think one of the things being isolated is usually not a great way to overcome, you know, substance use disorders. And that's no different for cannabis use disorder. Finding the positive people, making sure to try to avoid those with whom you had used before with, those are cues and triggers to use again. So, it's important to also be honest with oneself. Why am I going down this path? And it is challenging, but it's possible. So many, Many people have done it. So when people think again about addiction that, you can never get out of it, that's not true.
Do you think people are better off given the sometimes the shame and stigma that can come with like cannabis addiction because for so long it was seen as this lower tier drug that they're better off going into a cannabis specific like 12-step group or support group, or do you think that it's more accepted now in like traditional 12 steps?
I think it's more accepted now, and I think because they have seen the shift of these high potency THC that people are, getting addicted faster. They're showing many of the same signs as other substance use disorders. So I think to me, it's to start with whatever is available. It's just to take that first step. And then you go to, as you go down this path, you start to go more and more into the one that you see that works more for you. Trust me, there's no disorder on the that we ever say that there's one treatment for and that's it. Yet still for substance use disorder, we think, oh, it's just this and you'll be fine. No, everyone will be different. Everyone got into this path, into this disorder in a different way. And to get out of it, you have to realize you will get out of it also. You don't have to follow every single thing that everyone else did. There are different programs, and if one doesn't work for you, try the other. If this doesn't work, try the other. In cancer, we don't give everyone the same cancer treatment because it's very different. Everyone is different. So know that, if one thing didn't work, you're not a failure. It's that thing that didn't work for you. Something else will work.
One of the challenges I think people have is they get super excited to start this recovery journey, and then all of a sudden the novelty of that kind of wears off. And they start to get a craving. They start to think about like, oh, maybe I can go back and use and do it recreationally, and that can become hard. And then and as a result, people end up going back to it. What do you recommend people do when they get like a craving or they get some sort of thought where they're like, maybe I should just go back and try it differently this time?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, again, like many disorders, most disorders are relapsing disorders. And there's not a shame, but you have to, as soon as you recognize these urges and are coming through, it is about, reaching out to those people who can be honest and open, and also again, when you isolate yourself, that makes it worse. So again, do the things that can give you more access to people who I said in a positive manner. It is going to be normal when you realize it's normal that these thoughts will come in. It is normal even for people who are I'm addicted, to it is to chocolate potato chips. I'm not going to eat this and it is normal. We're human. It is what you put as buffers to you for yourself. When you know that you are starting to slip towards the edge, what buffers do you put there? You identify, you have those buffers in place before you even get to the edge. So, like I said, the therapist, your physician, whichever physician you may have, whether it's a psychiatrist or whatever disorders you might have, the friends, the family members who you know are positive, it's getting people who believe in you and won't give up on you, and that you don't give up on yourself. But to me, it's to do the things that give you pleasure that are not drug things, so that when you do get close to the edge, they're already there that can help you from going over that edge.